Good. Well, I'm Carlyn. I'm with the Texas Historical Commission, which is a state agency from the Texas Historic here in Texas. And we focus on a number of different historic preservation and heritage education programs.
Nice.
And one of those is our cemetery preservation program, which was started in the 1980s based on public outcry. Cemeteries were being threatened by construction and development associated with the economic boom here in Texas at that time. The program was formalized in the late 1990s, and the focus of the program was on documentation and awareness, and that's still the focus that we have for the program today. These are our three sort of program focus areas. We operate an outreach and education program where we go out and train people on best practices for how to preserve historic cemeteries, everything from the research that goes in to that effort to the actual hands-on work with the gravestones and with the landscapes. We answer questions via email and phone call, providing consultation and assistance to people who have questions about all kinds of aspects of cemetery preservation. We also offer the Historic Texas Cemetery designation, which is a prerequisite for getting a historical marker here in the state of Texas. And we also have a statewide inventory of historic cemeteries in Texas that we make available through our Historic Sites Atlas. We're up to about 17,000 known historic cemeteries here in Texas, and that number continues to grow as we learn about new or rediscover old cemeteries that we did not know about previously. And that's actually one of the things that you can do to help preserve and protect historic cemeteries is to go onto our Historic Sites Atlas and make sure that the cemeteries that you care the most about are actually reflected in our database and on our maps. You can help fill out some of the information, sort of flesh out the information that we have on these cemeteries. You can help make sure that our records are as accurate as possible. I will give you a tip when you go to search in the Historic Sites Atlas, and you can see a screenshot there on the right-hand side of your screen. You can search by the name of the cemetery, but I would encourage you to also search by using the map of the Sites Atlas, and I'll show you why here on the next screen.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of cemeteries go by lots of different names. Different groups of people over different periods of time referred to the cemetery by alternative names for whatever reasons. And so some of the cemeteries in our database, and on the left-hand side, you can sort of see some examples of this. Some of those cemeteries have four, five, six, I think 12 is probably the one that is the largest as alternate names. And so the name that you use to search by may not actually show up in our database, but we may actually know about the cemetery. We might just have it named something different. And so on the right-hand side is the map of the Historic Sites Atlas, and it works a lot like any other Google or Apple map. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can kind of drive around, pan around, and the cemeteries show up as green polygons. And so that's what you see here on the screen. Each one of those green labels is a different cemetery. You can click on those names, and whatever data we have about that cemetery will pop up on your screen. If it doesn't, if the cemetery that you're looking for, the cemetery that you care about, the cemetery where your ancestors are buried, if it's not in our Historic Sites Atlas, we definitely want you to file a record of an unknown or an abandoned cemetery. And you can find that form on our website there, listed on the bottom of your screen. You'll file that with the county clerk. Wherever the cemetery is located in that county, you'll file it with the county clerk. You'll send a copy of it to the landowner, whoever the property owner is, of the property that contains that cemetery. And the county clerk is going to send that information to us. And so the cemetery then has a little greater level of protection because it is recorded at both the county and the state level. And that's true for the Historic Texas Cemetery designation as well. Um, the existence of the cemetery gets recorded at the county level, it gets recorded at the state level. The application for the HTC is a really great way to sort of compile a bunch of data about the cemetery in one location. And that all stays on file here at the Texas Historical Commission in perpetuity. That information could come in handy for future researchers. We have 2,600 cemeteries. Actually, it's probably closer to 2,700 cemeteries now that have been donated at HTC. So we have quite a bit of information about those cemeteries. And we would invite you to submit an application for the cemetery that you care about the most, or any and all of the cemeteries that you have ancestors buried in. The website that's listed on the screen here is where you can find the application form. It's only $25 to submit that application, and we do accept them all year long. Finally, here's some other things that you can do to kind of help and preserve and protect these cemeteries. We need all the people we can to raise awareness about these cemeteries and cultivate appreciation. We know that 1/3 of the cemeteries, of those 17,000 cemeteries, we know that 1/3 of them have been abandoned. They have nobody who is caring for them, no one who is maintaining them. And then in addition to that, there are another third of those cemeteries that are really on the brink. The folks that are taking care of them are aging. They're not able to get out there as frequently to do the maintenance, to keep things going in a way that keeps the cemetery well maintained. And they don't always have younger folks who are willing to step in and take those roles from them. So please, be an advocate for these cemeteries. Donate your money. Most of these cemeteries don't do a whole lot of burials anymore, so there's not a lot of money coming in, but there is a whole lot of money going out. It's quite expensive to maintain the landscapes in these historic cemeteries. So please donate your money if you can, or donate your time. Volunteer to help with that maintenance. Better yet, volunteer to serve on the board of the Cemetery Association. Recruit other people to fill those positions with you. And then finally, you can visit regularly. That's another way that you can help. We do know that cemeteries that are more regularly visited tend to be better maintained. There's less chance for vandalism. There's just more sets of eyes on them to make sure that they're staying safe. And then related to visitation, this is just my last kind of slide here. In Texas, state law does allow for ingress and egress to cemeteries that are located on private property. And in Texas, that's actually a large number of cemeteries where you actually have to cross private property to get to the cemetery itself. So state statute does require that property owner allow for reasonable ingress and egress as long as you give the proper notification. And that's spelled out in the law there that you see on your screen. And in Texas, this right is actually extended to anyone who wishes to visit for cemetery purposes. You do not have to be a direct descendant. You don't have to prove that you are descendant from someone who is buried there, and that's new, or not new. It's unique. In other states, you do have to prove that descendancy. And then finally, this is where you can find more information about our program. That's our website that's listed there on your screen. That's an email address where you can reach all of the staff persons in our cemetery program. There are three of us. All three of us have access to that email, and one of us will get back to you just as quickly as we can. These are two of the things that you can find on our website. One is our guidelines for preservation. That is a 16-page PDF that contains all kinds of information. You have preservation guidelines, best practices for preservation. We highlight some specific cemetery laws that can help with preservation. We have information about the designation, cleaning grave markers, all kinds of good things in those guidelines. And then you can also subscribe to our quarterly e-newsletter, Grave Concerns in Texas, that comes out every 3 months. We highlight recent HTC designations, we share preservation tips, and we link out to historic cemeteries that have been in the news. And so it's a good kind of way to keep up with what's going on. And so I think we might have, I don't know, Robin, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. If Katie or Laura has any questions about the program, I'm happy to answer.
Um, do you find that most people contact you, like
Time to
they seek you
change.
out?
I'm sorry, Katie, you want to repeat that one last time?
Do they seek you? Do they come to you saying, "Hey, there's a cemetery in my neighborhood or in my, county or whatever," or
Yeah,
do you see these
both. I would
these
say
cases?
that,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, mostly it's people that come to us.
yeah.
There's only three of us for the whole state, and there's
Oh, amazing.
17,000 cemeteries. So we mostly rely on people to come to us, but we do,
Right.
whenever we can, try to get out in the field.
Okay. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing that people are concerned about these spaces
Absolutely.
that are pretty sacred.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important that we um, protect them.
Yeah. Thank you. That's
You're
fabulous. Thank you
welcome.
so much. I'm going to look
Yeah,
up your website.
good. Thank you. Enjoy your next
Yeah.
breakout session.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, Laura. Hello. I came
Hi,
in
Laura.
I came in early or
Yep.
late, depending
Yes,
on
You
you
how
came
you
in
look
yes,
at
late.
it.
you came in
That's okay.
early.
There you go. It was both, and we're going to start it over from the beginning right now. So you'll get to hear the whole thing.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So my name
This is our
is
last session.
Good. So my name's Carlyn Hammons, and I do work at the Texas Historical Commission. And the commission is a state agency, so I do work for state government. We administer a variety of different programs centered around historic preservation, heritage education, heritage travel, and we're broken up into a bunch of different divisions, but the division that I work in is the History Programs Division. And some of the things that we do, we have an outreach program to our local county historical commissions. We administer the National Register of Historic Places, which is a federal program, but is administered each state level. We have our very, very popular Historic Markers program, and we also have the program that I work in, which is the Historic Cemetery Preservation Program. Oops, pardon me. There we go. So the Cemetery Preservation Program is actually a new-ish program for the commission. Our commission has existed in some form or the other since the early 1950s. But there wasn't a standalone cemetery preservation program until the late 1990s, actually. And that was the result of about a decade of really public outcry, public concern for the vulnerability of our historic cemeteries. This was an era of really sort of rapid growth in the state. The population was booming, and so then there was related construction and development, highway construction, all of it. And some of these cemeteries that had been in very isolated rural areas were now being threatened by a lot of this development. And people were really concerned. And so the agency was taking a lot of phone calls. And over time, we were able to secure funding from the legislature to establish a standalone program aimed just at cemetery preservation. And so from the very beginning, the focus for that program has been documentation of historic cemeteries and raising public awareness, not just about the significance of these cemeteries, but also raising awareness about their vulnerability as a way to try to help spur volunteer efforts to protect and preserve them. And so these are sort of our three main focus areas for our program. We do quite a bit of outreach and education. We go out and talk to groups about best practices for preserving historic cemeteries. We everything from, how to do the research that's necessary to sort of establish the history and the background of a particular cemetery, to the hands-on kind of work of cleaning and repairing gravestones, managing the landscape in these historic cemeteries. We do that both in the field, and we also do quite a few virtual opportunities as well, including regular meetings with our county historical commissions to make sure that they have the resources that they need to help the people that live there locally in their counties. We're also available to answer just any kind of questions, cemetery related questions, by phone or by email. We talk to a large number of people every month on all types of cemetery topics. We also offer the Historic Texas Cemetery Designation Program. This is a program that is a prerequisite for getting a historical marker for a cemetery. The application process involves putting together, photographs and maps and deeds and basic data about the cemetery, and all of that stays on file here at the Texas Historical Commission in perpetuity. So far, we've designated more than 2,600 cemeteries across the state. That number is growing. I think we're actually probably closer to 2,700 at this time. But we've got a long way to go, because you can see that third thing that we focus on is building our statewide inventory. And we are aware of at least 17,000 historic cemeteries within the state of Texas. And so 2,700 have been designated through the HTC program, but you can tell that we've got a long way to go, because there are still a number of them that are eligible for that designation. We do make those cemetery locations and basic data about those cemeteries available to the public through our Historic Sites Atlas online, and I'm going to talk about that here in the next slide. So this is actually one of the things that you can do to kind of help preserve and protect the cemeteries. Go on the atlas and make sure that those cemeteries that you care about the most, those cemeteries maybe where you have loved ones buried, make sure that we have those in our Texas Historic Sites Atlas. Make sure the information that we have about those cemeteries is complete, make sure that it's accurate, and let us know if we have errors or omissions, because we want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date records that we can. When you search, and I've got a screenshot of this on the right-hand side of the screen there, when you do your search, you're going to get the best results not by searching by name, which is the screenshot that I have here, but actually searching by the map. And I'll show you that on the next screen, and that'll kind of help explain why. So a lot of historic cemeteries have more than one name. They've been known by different names during different periods of their history. Maybe different groups of people called them by different names. Some of the cemeteries in our database have 2, 3, 4, 5 different, also known as, names. I think 12 is probably the record. At least one cemetery that has at least 12 alternate names. And so if you search by name, the name that you know the cemetery by, it might come up, empty. It might come up blank. But we might actually have it in our database under a different name. And so you can kind of see on the left-hand side, it's just some examples of the cemeteries in our database. Those names in blue are the name that we have it listed under, but the other names that are listed in gray underneath are other names that the cemetery has been referred to as. And so, again, searching by name might not get you where you need to go. However, if you use the map, which is what you see on the right-hand side, you'll probably have better luck. If you'll just navigate to where you know the cemetery or the approximate location of where you think that cemetery is, you'll be able to find out if we have it in the database or not. And so that map works, just like a Google map or an Apple map, or any kind of map that you have on your phone or computer. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can kind of pan around, drive around, looking for the location of that cemetery. The cemeteries show up as green polygons. And if you click on those green polygons, the data will pop up that we have for the cemetery. And again, it will be basic data, the location, the driving directions to get there, perhaps how many burials, the dates of use, that sort of thing. And here's what you can do if you don't find that cemetery that you really, really care about. You can file a record of an abandoned or an unknown cemetery. There is a sample form on our website, and that's the address there, the thc.texas.gov/notice. That's how you get to that sample form. You'll fill that form out with the information that you have about that particular cemetery, and you'll file it with the county clerk so that it is filed in the local county records officially. You'll provide a copy of that to the property owner who contains the cemetery, so that they're also aware that the cemetery exists on their property. And the county clerk is going to forward all of that information to us here at the Texas Historical Commission so that we can add it into our historic sites atlas and into our database. And getting the cemeteries on those maps is important. It's really hard for us to protect things if we don't know where they are. And so those locations are really critical to the preservation of those places. You could also choose to apply for that HTC designation that I spoke about earlier. This puts all of that important information about the cemetery in one location, and more importantly, it stays forever on file here at the state. And so that information is available to future researchers, or, should something happen to the cemetery at some point in the future, we have information on, the condition of that cemetery at any particular point in time. And again, we've had 2,600 of them designated so far, but we really want to get to that 17,000 at some point in the future. And then these are some other things that you can do to help preserve and protect cemeteries. Again, if I didn't mention it earlier, about 1/3 of the cemeteries in the state have been abandoned. There is nobody who is responsible for their care. Those cemeteries are not being maintained, and so they are extremely vulnerable. But there's an additional third that are really on the brink of this. The caretakers that have been caretaking, for the last, decades are getting older. They're not able to get out there and do maintenance the way that they once were. And they're not, their ranks aren't being, I guess, grown by newer people who are stepping up to take their place in those roles as caretakers. So we encourage you to do whatever you can to raise awareness about these cemeteries, to raise awareness about the vulnerabilities that they face, help cultivate appreciation, particularly in newer generations, because that's who will be the stewards of these places in the future. And so helping them to appreciate historic cemeteries and their significance is really critical. So please be an advocate for that anytime that you can. Another thing that you might do, if you're able, is to donate your money to some cemeteries where your ancestors are buried. We hear from cemetery organizations all the time. In fact, this is a very common phone call that we get. They are in real danger of running out of funds to maintain the cemetery. A lot of times, these places are not conducting very many new burials, and so that means there's very little money coming in, and yet there's a lot of money going out. It's really expensive to maintain these historic cemeteries, and there are very, very, very few public sources of funds for them to tap into. And so the money that goes into maintaining these cemeteries does come from private donations. And so if you're able to do that, I would encourage you to do it. You could also volunteer to give some of your time to help with these maintenance activities, or better yet, you can volunteer to serve on the board of one of these cemetery organizations. Again, most of them that I am in communication with, they are getting older and they're not going to be able to do this for very much longer, and they are really, really looking for people to take their place. And you can recruit others maybe to join you in this effort by serving on a cemetery association board. And then finally, you can visit the cemetery regularly. The information that we have shows that cemeteries that have regular visitors tend to be better maintained. They tend to be vandalized less often. They tend to just be in better shape altogether. And then along those lines of visiting, I do want to make sure that I point this out. Many of the cemeteries in Texas are located on private property. In other words, you have to cross somebody's private land in order to get to some of these cemeteries. We are fortunate in Texas that we do have a state law that requires reasonable ingress and egress to and from those cemeteries, as long as you provide the property owner with proper notification. And that the requirements for that notification are listed in this statute that you see listed on your screen here. Another thing to point out is that in Texas, this right is extended to anyone who wants to visit that cemetery for cemetery purposes. It's not limited to just descendants, and that is somewhat unique in Texas. A lot of other states have similar laws, but it applies only to descendants. But in Texas, as long as you are visiting for a purpose that is usually associated with cemetery visits, that landowner is required to provide with that ingress and egress to those cemeteries. And then finally, you can go find more information about our program. That's our website listed there. That's our email address where you can reach our staff. Again, we do have 3 people dedicated to our cemetery preservation program, and you can reach all 3 of us by using that email address. When you go online, you'll find both of these resources available. The first one is the Preservation Guidelines, which is a 16-page PDF. It covers all sorts of preservation best practices. It covers cemetery laws, more information about that HTC designation program, cleaning grave markers, all kinds of good things in that PDF. You can also subscribe to our quarterly e-newsletter that comes out once every 3 months. We try to highlight HTCs that have a really good history, really good story. We highlight different tips for preservation, and we include links out to historic cemeteries that have made it into the news. And you'll find the subscribe button there on that webpage that's listed on your screen. And with that, I think we have just a few minutes left. Laura, thanks for joining us. Do you have any questions or any issue you want to discuss regarding cemeteries?
No, not today. I was just kind of getting an idea of what is offered and etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, I'm glad that that you joined us today, and please take some time. We have all kinds of things on our website. There are several different training webinars, recorded webinars that we have on there. One of them is aimed at disaster preparedness and disaster response. That came out of a need after Hurricane Harvey, where we did have a number of cemeteries that were damaged by that hurricane. And so we do have some videos that go through how to be better prepared for that, how to respond if it happens. And it's it's helpful for all kinds of situations. It doesn't have to be a disaster. In fact, I think that the training videos are also really helpful for people who are maybe working in cemeteries that have been neglected for a really long time, perhaps have been abandoned, because in a way you are sort of responding to a disaster. It's very much bringing those cemeteries back is very much like bringing a cemetery back from a natural disaster. So I would encourage you to check those out if you're able to.
All right. Thank you. I will do.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank you for the help that you gave us when we were working on Oakland Cemetery in Dallas.
Yes.
We are so pleased with our marker, that everything went through, that we got the county and the city involved, and we're actually getting some additional help from the city through our representative for that area of Dallas in helping maintain it. I mean, you can't imagine the improvement in that cemetery since I walked it in 2000 to 2005. It's a wonderful place now. We're so proud of our marker. We just go and look at it.
You guys should be very, very proud of that marker. You put all of the sweat equity into getting it, and it's definitely something to be proud of. Yes, I've been following the cemetery's progress on Facebook and different, other ways online, and that's a great example. That was a cemetery that was on the brink of being abandoned. It got into a pretty precarious situation, but you all in the community really stepped up and did what it took to get it back to where it is now. And it was a huge effort, and you should definitely be very proud.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will say, since we have a little extra time here, I think the Texas Historical Commission is planning to roll out a new designation program. This one will be specifically for freedmen's cemeteries. That legislation was passed by Senator Roy West in the last legislative session, and so we're currently it, putting together the rules and the application forms and all of that for the new program. But we are hoping to be able to roll it out, fingers crossed, by summer 2026. So kind of stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be a really popular program, and we're excited to get started on it.